Yeah, granted. And then we have Robert, right? Robert, you're the last of the day.
No, wait, what about
Oh, I'm sorry. Robert is the last of the day. Yeah, we do have Stupid Solaris tricks right after Robert. And then we've got a little bit of breathing room for everyone to kind of catch their breath, and then it's food time. So, David, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Okay, can everybody breathe all right? Is it cool enough in here that you'll stay awake? Anybody?
If you do tricks, we will.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's for later. I see word has gotten out. So
I keep seeing the missing QL word.
Yes. Well, I'll discuss that later. Much later. So I like to think of these as programming languages rather than procedural languages because they're not all procedural. In fact, many of them are not even vaguely procedural. So we could call them programming languages that you could plug in. Anyhow, for those of you who don't know me, I know that's got to be come on. There we go. I've been on the project for a little while, and I've written an infamously horrible hack that actually got into 8.3 thanks to mostly work by Andrew and Tom called arrays with compound types. Anyhow, so that's...
I think it ended up not being handy.
Sorry?
I think it ended up not being handy.
Well, that's because you worked on it, and I worked on it. All right, so we start with everybody's favorite elephant, and it's got amazing pluggability. I'm going to talk about one of those kinds of pluggability. So, I like to call it Postgres because it's a lot easier to pronounce.
Postgre.
All right.
Postgre.
Let's hear it from the. Let's see. That's the Brazilian and then the French contingent.
Right.
Okay.
Oui.
Well, I guess we can call them procedural languages, but they're not really because we've got Perl, which is it can be just about anything you want it to be, including functional. We've got Ruby. I'll explain about the use in just a minute. There's PL lol code. That's as of this week that you can actually execute code in this. Anybody familiar with lol code?
Is that like lolcats?
Yeah. So that's what lolcats would code in if they were walking over the keyboard. My favorite vaporware project here that I started is PL Parrot. Parrot being a virtual machine for dynamic languages. I'm not going to talk too much about PL Parrot because Parrot is still a moving target, and trying to attach PL to it is just more energy than I've got right now. So when it slows down, there'll be a PL Parrot. I've got a couple of developers on it already. So about those U's in parentheses. PLs come in two varieties, trusted and untrusted. The untrusted ones can do interesting and dangerous things, and so their creation is limited to the super user because they can, do things like remove RF $PG data, which could be considered a little bit of a problem. Well, yeah. So they can do much more interesting things because they can open pipes and file handles, and I've written code that horribly abuses both of those things. Trusted languages basically are much more circumscribed in what they can do, but then what you get for that is that Well, that's actually a feature, because then you can let regular users create those functions or methods or whatever you want to call them, and you don't have to be giving out super user access willy-nilly. First one I got to use was this little guy. Any Perl users in the house? Oh, good. What is Perl's biggest killer feature? Anybody?
Regular spreadsheets.
Okay, that's a good one, but I prefer this one. That's because I can look like a rock star just by going to CPAN and doing a little creative searching and getting the 90% of my project done. As far as I know, no other language has something that's quite this extensive for it. So, if I can borrow something from the Ruby people, it's the dry principle, is that? Don't repeat yourself. This is a great way of, sorry? Rails? Okay, well, thanks. Hey, something good came out with Rails.
It actually predates Rails.
We can have a throwdown later.
They actually came from, I think, from Martin Fowler or one of his cohorts in Java days.
Oh, okay. Well,
Something came good from Java.
There you go.
okay, so basically CPAN is a great way of not reinventing the wheel, but it forces you to open a file handle, and so you have to do all this groovy stuff as the database super user. So just, when you're doing this, it's a trade-off like most things in life. And so you have to just weigh that as you're doing it. Yes?
As I recall, untrusted means it must be created as a super user. It can be executed by anyone.
Yes, you can grant permissions to other people to execute, but when you're creating it. I seem to recall some idea that there might be a way to load modules into a trusted Perl. Is there anything to that?
That's an idea.
Okay.
Yeah, well, the plan is to allow you to be able to specify a bunch of modules which you would trust in a configuration file. So you might say put something in the that only the super user could operate, which would allow certain Perl modules to be loaded, so that you wouldn't be restricted to not loading any modules. But we need to do that in a way which wasn't going to get around the restrictions on super user only.
Right.
And that means we need to rejig the way that Perl config is done, and the general language config is done, so that because it's currently fairly unsafe.
Right. Well, that sounds like a great 8.4 project if anybody has time. Very, very useful thing. Another thing I found useful in PL Perl is the shared hash. Who all here has used that? Okay, so yes. So it's interesting because Andrew showed you something just fascinated that I took and ran with maybe a little too far, which is that you can stick what amounts to function pointers in here. From there, all kinds of fascinating things can happen to your code, and there's all manner of strange things that you can do with it. So you can call Perl functions directly instead of having to create an SQL wrapper, and you can make one called eval, which that's about as dangerous as it sounds, but you can do it. Okay, so that's actually kind of a very handy tool to have in your tool chest. You can also store session data and do things like running aggregates, but those aren't quite as exciting and adrenaline rushish as
Self-modifying code.
Well, yeah, you can do that. I don't recommend it, but you can. Then, when you write code, you also need to be able to debug it, so your usual Perl stuff just works. Warn, die. Elog is a way to call the C analog of log, and so you can do notices and info and various levels of logging. Kind of like warn and die for the vast majority of things. They just, because then your Perl skills that you already have on hand just transfer. So when you want to do a little bit more advanced debugging, you can use, this is only available in PL ProU, you can use some sort of serialization. YAML happens to be one I'm a little familiar with. And then stuff things into your YAML format, and then show some big data structure that you've been using in the logs, or maybe in a result set, depending on what it is that you want to do. So, on debuggers, I know this is not going to be terribly popular, but here's what Kernighan had to say. Basically, if your Perl code is so clever and so convoluted that you need to attach a debugger to it, you're not smart enough to actually have written that code and maintain it. So just don't.
I wonder what he would say about Perl.
Well,
That's about what.
Perl doesn't have to be Byzantine, it just can be Byzantine, just like anything else. Okay. So, yes, you can do C.
I'm saying Kernighan helped invent C, so
Oh, right.
it can't be.
Yeah, he can't. Yeah, he probably.
He shouldn't
something
throw
about glass
stones, is
houses.
what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. So Ruby, lots of people seem to like it. I just don't know all that well just yet, and I'd like to thank Dave Wheeler here for the examples I'm going to show. It has a thing that's like may grow into a CPAN someday. Are there other repositories that people like to use for?
There are a couple, but Ruby Gems is fast becoming the industry standard.
Okay. So bear this one in mind. Again, try not to repeat yourself. Your time is valuable, and you might want to go home and do something other than code. So use those. Now I'm going to go over a little bit of a couple of examples of how you'd use these programming languages. So thanks, David. We have here a bunch of barcodes. Well, actually, barcodes, well, they come in UPC and EAN and G10. Oy. So, got to ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Yeah, somebody saw that one. Turns out they're all actually G10s, so you only have to validate them one way. They have a checksum. So basically, we're going to create a custom type, and in order to create a custom type, we make a validator function that returns Boolean. Here's a bad way to do it in PL Perl. What's wrong with this code? Anybody?
Somebody else might have already written it.
No, that's one possibility. I was going to say, I think this is a great way to introduce bugs.
Did I write that? You're not fond of one-liners?
Well, let's say, one-liners are great, but I tend to try and get people fired who put too many of these into code bases. Just, yeah, there's just, you know, the cleverness part wears off, and the 3 AM debugging part of this sort of construct is.
Not to mention there's not even documentation.
Yeah, you know, I'm trying to figure out how best to use pod in these. I actually wrote some of that for a client, but they decided to keep it for themselves, and I think they're, well, considering what it was, they're welcome to it. But it would be kind of nice if you could turn pods into automatic comment ons, let's say. So here's how you do it in PL Ruby, and I guess it's a little bit more elegant, although. Well, okay, so the main thing about this is that it was something that I didn't have to write, because David here wrote it, and it fits on the slide.
So you can do almost nearly illegible one-liners in Ruby also.
Yeah, actually, I could have used some of the enumerable methods in Ruby to make this a lot simpler, a lot more elegant, but I wasn't sure they would work in PL Ruby. They wouldn't PL Ruby U.
Oh, okay.
We can use enumerable, but I don't want to give you that much trouble.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I confess I only tested this code once, and that was at OSCON this year. And you can also do it in SQL. SQL is a programming language. It's Turing complete, which means that you can do some, well,
It's just long, man.
yeah. It's pretty long.
Hey, it took me like a week to write that.
Wait.
No joke.
No, I easily believe you. One of the big advantages of language SQL is that you don't have to check whether any so-called programming languages are installed, because it can't be removed from your database. Right? Because, you know, if you remove that, you'd be kind of back to, I guess, PostgreSQL or something. I don't know exactly how you manage that. So that's, I mean, if you're doing a tool that's meant to be distributed in environments that you have no tiniest control over, SQL is actually a pretty good language to write functions in. And of course, you know, it's doable. You can do all this. So now we get to the really complicated part where we create the GTIN type. Okay, well, I guess it wasn't all that complicated after all. So it's basically a type over big int, so that the stuff will all fit in there, and then you just check for this Boolean condition, and that's that.
Doesn't that need to be
Does it?
Yeah,
This works, I think. I don't know. Can somebody check?
No, I think
I think you have to have the it's a domain. Actually,
That's the main
Already. I will check that again because I thought I had.
well, and it results in a data type, obviously, a pseudo type.
Right. So now we go to a sort of much more complex. I think this one's a domain. Yeah, this one's a domain over text. Has anybody tried to write a validator that looks like his email?
If you're willing to ignore all of the 1,000 corner cases, it's pretty easy.
Well, you know, there's no limit to how quickly you can get a piece of code out the door as long as it doesn't work. Okay, so we have this function, and there needs to be something in the function body. Here's one possibility. As you will all recognize, this is the regular expression that's intended to match email addresses.
No,
Okay.
that's the Rosetta Stone.
I was going to say.
Okay, don't do this. Don't.
Didn't Randall write that?
I think he may have.
He's the only one in the world that could.
I wrote it.
I'm sorry. Okay, so obviously regular expression is a powerful language, but it's not quite the right language to do it. We'll talk about what the right thing to do is. So, in all your Perl code, you should probably be doing this in some format or other, no matter what. There are ways to do this in PL Perl, which is that is it a begin block or is it and there's also a GUC variable that lets you use strict, but I don't think there's one for use warnings just yet.
Okay.
So I think warnings would have to go in a begin block if you want to turn those on in PL Perl rather than PL Perl U.
I'm not even sure if you can do it.
No? Oh, okay. Well, there used to be a way to sort of munge the begin block and get this lit. Okay, so here's more of this. So we use one of those famous CPAN modules. And then we just run some checks. Now there's something very badly wrong with this checking function if you want a performant system, because it makes a call out to the network, and that means that every write,
And you're going to need your resolve working.
right?
Yeah, don't do that.
And your database has to be able to talk to the world at large.
Yeah.
Which is normally not the case.
Yeah. So, but if you wanted to do some really draconian checking on there, you could dial it up or down just as you like.
There's a worse objection, which is that if you do that, then the function can't be immutable. So
Then you can't index.
So having a domain with a non-immutable type checking function is probably a very bad thing to do.
Okay.
Right? Because one minute the VFS could be valid, and then the next minute the MX record disappears and it's not valid anymore.
Right.
What your data suddenly you've corrupted your database in there.
Okay. Good point. Yeah. Watch out for mutability, I guess, is one of the takeaways from this little disaster. So basically, if this thing is defined and return true, otherwise say y failed, and here we interpolate the y's and return false. So that's this is how you construct your email domain. So basically, I'm just trying to cast this string to the email domain, and that just works. I cast this one, which has a TLD that, as far as I know, is not yet in existence.
Well, that's it. Right, unless you add Joe's house of TLDs to your domain result.
Right. So .con is probably not a correct TLD, so it errors out. Perl is kind of nice outside of the database too. So you can do something like this, and go on as you usually might for some web program or monitoring application or whatever. Here's one, a program that its job is to be run once per operating system, and then vanish. So what we do is use proc process table and instantiate it, and then we have to do something blecherous because apparently the fields shift depending on whether you actually looked at the table or not. I'm not exactly sure why this is, but this is what I did to get it working. And so a process table will have some fields, and we'll start with an empty array. Then we just walk through the fields and do some very rough data type matching. A better library would match the C types to Postgres types and do it that way, but that better library probably couldn't be written in Perl, or if it could, it would be much, much longer than the equivalent C one. But this gives sort of a rough guess. So then we do some, well, I don't know, is this standard? Is this a standard construct in Perl, or is it just one I use too much?
Join? Yeah.
Yeah.
Join's a standard. Yeah.
Right, so it's in a double quoted string, and we give it a header, create a type.
Oh, it's a here document.
Yeah. It's here document at brace bracket and bracket brace at the end to interpolate this join thing. And I tried to do it in such a way as you could actually read it off if you were to just spit it out to a file. Because if I have to generate SQL, I'd like it to be SQL that I can read, just in case I need to debug it later. And then we just close off the type creation, and that's what you see. So let's use this. I'd like to show off I know it's not really PL related, but there's some really cool features in PSQL that you may not have used before. Who's used backticks? Okay, well, there's okay. So so you can use backticks. You can also set PSQL variables to be you can set them to fixed constants, and you can also set them to be the output of this thing, which is what we're doing here. And then because the output of that says create type or process table type as, and then keeps going and it ends off at the semicolon, you can just call it with a colon in front of it, and it will just do the right thing. So, stupid PSQL tricks, but they can be handy.
Well, at least you can get some latex examples.
There is LaTeX output for
table output.
For table output in PSQL. That's a little scary. Okay, so we're going to make a function called getPS that returns a set of this table type that we just created here in PL Prelude. So we say use proc process table, instantiate a process table, and return the whole thing, because it is a yes.
Just out of curiosity, because I don't use Perl that much anymore. Is proc process table part of the main Perl libraries, or do I got to CPAN now?
I think you may have to CPAN that. I'm not sure. Yeah, Andrew says yes. Fortunately, CPANing is easy. Okay, so this returns a hash ref that has a reference to, is it an array? In any case,
It's going to be an array.
okay, so it's an array ref that returns, and the array has hash references in it that correspond to each of the rows. Okay, so I'm going to contrive a little example of why you might want to read the process table. So This query, well, it's obviously not the right thing because, well, why? Yeah, that's right. It's a cross join of three big tables, so it's gonna hammer your resources on your system. Well, you can do these accidentally more easily than it looks here, because anytime you put, commas, for example, or you forget to qualify a join quite the right way, you can get this sort of misbehavior. So if you suddenly see the system slowing down in a huge way and resource contention and stuff like that, one of the things you can do is, well, you can start looking, like how big is the biggest process on this machine, let's say. So we joined pgstat activity to the process table. That was the point of this exercise. And then, get the biggest whatever, or the longest whatever, or the smallest whatever, or maybe just all of it and order it in a way that makes sense to you. And you have the query plus a whole bunch of the process table information that's attached to the query, or the back end that's associated with same. And so I just completely contrived this, but it's but the idea is that you're supposed to be able to find the things that are causing trouble using information gleaned from the process table. You could do a very similar thing with, say, the output of IOStat, or basically anything that looks tabular. You could make it look table-like and then start joining it to things that are inside Postgres or to other things like it. SQL is a great way to sort of join and compare and munge tabular things, which is why I went to all this trouble in the first place. So there was as promised,
Next lecture.
So just this week, Josh Tolley, who couldn't make it here, unfortunately, got low code running as a programming language inside of PostgreSQL. It's on PG Foundry, and basically it's really easy to work with at the moment. Of course, it doesn't do a whole lot at the moment, but more importantly, Josh has been documenting how it was that he went from Lex grammar, or was it Yak grammar? Yeah, Yak grammar, all the way through to a PL, which is something that could have uses when you have
PL.
I wouldn't say real. I'd say like more widely used or already there, or yeah, something like that. So basically, to compile it, just download the source. Make sure you have Flex 2.5.33. I found this out while porting, if you want to call it that, low code to OS X. Okay, so now the software make install, and the software is now ready for use, but not yet installed in a database. To install lol code in a database, you basically create a language handler. I'm hoping we can register this lol code so that we could just create language lol code, PL lol code, but this may be a little ways off. Depends on how how popular lol code turns out to be as a way of writing functions or stored procedures. Anyway, so you make, this is the verbose version of making a PL, and then, or sorry, a handler for a PL, and then you actually create the language using this handler that you just created. Any questions?
You're missing an L, should be PL. Oh, no, yeah.
I'm sorry?
I thought you didn't have enough L's in there. Okay.
Yeah, I'm really bad at typos and stuff. This will work. Sorry?
I was just trying to pronounce it. Lol code. Actually, it looks like Welsh, actually. Woof code.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, I was trying to figure out what the voice should be for the lolcats, because it can't be because that's already taken. So if anybody's got some idea of what spoken lolcats would sound like. There you go. Okay, so using it, we create or replace this function local test language PL code pass, and we output the function body as usual. And so we have begin, and then we raise a notice, and then we raise info just in case we wanted to, amp up the debugging information, and then we return true. And of course you have to end the function. Okay, thanks, bye. So then you call it.
Oh, show us more.
Do you have the grammar?
It's on the PL code part of PG Foundry. It's all there. Okay, so then you select lol code main test. This is how we call functions because we don't yet have a call. I don't know whether we're going to. Is call on the to-do list?
Along with create procedure, yes.
Okay. Anyhow, so
autonomous transactions.
right. Okay, so nothing terribly exciting about this, but it's kind of nice to know that you can write functions in lol code. This is not yet implemented. Okay, so
This trumps that SQL.
well, it's actually fairly clear, right? I mean, it's asking for, I believe it's SPI, and it's got a. No, I think this is the SPI call. I'm not quite real clear on this part.
Is that the found variable?
IHAS result.
That could be. Although new looks like an exception of some kind, like yeah, you're right. It's probably not found. This is sort of forward. Yeah.
We'll edit it out.
Oh, come on!
Well, you gotta put something in the extras in the DVD. Right?
Oh, there you go. So this is like outtakes, or yeah. Okay, so did you find is it let's say if not found? So this part is if not found. Then gotta
Die.
gotta die. Yeah,
Someone's EPS will stealing your data. That's just.
and then close off the conditional here, and then since you've gotten past it. Okay, so I want to actually show the record, and I think it's just that one field out of the record. That's here. Yeah, I think that's returned next here. So, yeah. I think that's returned next because if it, otherwise, well, no, you know, it might be notice.
If next is null, actually.
Yeah. Anyhow, so then you know it keeps looping and is off the code. Wow. That's some of the joy you'll expect in PL roll code as it comes.
This
out.
will not be going in the back end.
You know, with a grammar as simple as this one, it could be very tightly optimized.
It looks just like AppleScript.
May well have been inspired by AppleScript. I think it's a real artist here right now.
The thing I like about this, well, is there's no underscores and no colons. It's not like Rails.
Yeah. Anyhow, so just to finish off, I'd like to thank you all for your patience here. Right, so I'll clear off for the next speaker.
Watch out for Robert. Knocking stuff over already.
No, I started off by nice.
That's good.
Where's laptop? How cool is that?
All right, so how you guys feeling? Keeping up?
Or